President Muhammadu Buhari has this morning been addressing Nigerians on the occasion of the nation's 60th anniversary, and the most of the address focused on what he termed peaceful coexistence, without which it will be difficult to achieve collective greatness. Going down memory lane, President Buhari recalled the sacrifices made by the country's early leaders towards securing self-determination for a country of 45 million people at the time of attainment of independence. He said Nigeria today is beset by myriads of challenges around insecurity because of the pressure being exerted on the land, which supports a population that has now grown to more than 200 million. The president, among other things, celebrated recent electoral successes in Edo State and promised to expedite action on needed electoral reforms. Other areas covered by his speech include the increase in the price of petrol, which he said has come to stay because of the subsistent economic circumstances, the rule of law, the need to improve the economy for a secure future. Let's hear more from the president.
I speak to you today as your president and fellow student on this epoch occasion of our country's 60th independence anniversary. As president, I wish to renew my appreciation to Nigerians for entrusting me with your hopes and aspirations for a better and greater Nigeria. Today, it is my unique privilege to recommit myself to the service of this great country of great people with profound diversities and opportunities. We are bound by destiny to be the largest and greatest black nation on earth. At this stage in our nationhood, it is important that we reflect how we got here to enable us to work together to get to where we aspire to be as a strong, indivisible nation, united in hope and equal in opportunity. On October 1st, 1960, when Prime Minister Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa received the constitutional instruments symbolizing Nigeria's independence, he expressed his wish that having acquired our rightful status as an independent sovereign nation, history will record that the building of our nation proceeded at the wisest pace. This optimism was anchored on the peaceful planning, full and open consultation, and harmonious cooperation with the different groups, which culminated in Nigeria emerging as a country without bitterness and bloodshed. Our founding fathers understood the imperative of structuring a national identity using the power of the state and worked towards the unification of Nigerians in a politically stable and viable entity. That philosophy guided the foundation that was laid for our young nation of 45 million people, with an urban population of approximately 7 million, occupying an area of 910,768 square kilometers. These demographics led to development challenges for which major efforts were made to overcome. Today, we grapple with multiple challenges, with a population exceeding 200 million, occupying the same land mass, but 52% residing in urban areas. 60 years of nationhood provides an opportunity to ask ourselves questions on the extent to which we have sustained the aspirations of our founding fathers. Where did we do the right things? Are we on course? If not, where did we stray, and how can we remedy and retrace our steps? Upon attaining independence, Nigeria's growth trajectory was anchored on policies and programs that positively impacted on all sectors of the economy. However, this journey was cut short by the 30 months of civil war. We came out of the civil war with a focus on reconstruction, rehabilitation, and reconciliation that enabled the country to put in place world-class development structures and a strengthened public service that well served the government. This positive trajectory continued with a return to democratic government, which was truncated by another round of military rule. For a cumulative 29 of our 60 years existence as a nation, we have been under military rule. My summary of our journey so far as a nation is necessary to appropriately chart where we need to go and how to get there together. Today, I am aware that our economy, along with every single economy in the world, is in crisis. We still face security challenges in parts of the country, while our society suffers from high loss of moral rectitude, which is driven by unbridled craving for political control. An underlying cause of most of the problems we have faced as a nation is our consistent harping on artificially contrived fault lines that we have harbored and allowed unnecessarily to fester. In addition, institutions such as civil service, police, the judiciary, the military all suffered from a general decline. We need to begin a sincere process of national healing, and this anniversary presents a genuine opportunity to eliminate old and outworn perceptions that are always put to test in the lie they always are. The stereotype of thinking of ourselves as coming from one part of the country before seeing ourselves as Nigerians is a key starting point to project us on the road to our deserved nation's evolution and integration. To start this healing process, we are already blessed with the most important asset any nation requires for such, our people. And this has manifested globally in the exploits of Nigerians in many fields. It has been demonstrated time and time again that Nigerians in the diaspora frequently excel in science, technology, medicine, sports, arts, and many other fields. Similarly, the creativity, ingenuity, and resourcefulness of the Nigerian at home has resulted in globally recognized endeavors. I am convinced that if we pursue our aspirations together, we would be able to achieve whatever we desire. That informed our adopting the theme together to mark this epochal event. Together, we can change our condition for the better, and more importantly, together we can do much more for ourselves and for our country. I choose the path of self-reflection because this is what I do on a daily basis. And I must confess that at most times I always felt the need for a collective reflection, as I know that the foundation for a solid future, which this administration is laying, can only be sustainable if there is a collective commitment by Nigerians. Nigeria is not a country for Mr. President, any ruling or opposition party, but a country for all of us, and we must play our part irrespective of challenges we face to make this country what we desire. To achieve this, we must focus our minds together as a people on ways of resolving the identified critical challenges that underlie our present state. These include A, evolving and sustaining a democratic culture that leaves power in the hands of the people. B, supporting the enthronement of the rule of law, demanding accountability of elected representatives and contributing to good governance. C, increasing our commitment to peaceful coexistence in a peaceful, secure, and united Nigeria.
Right. The speech there by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that's President Muhammadu Buhari. I mean, what's your take on that 60 years down the line? What's your take on all of this?
Well, I liked the speech. I thought it was appropriate. I thought that it sort of tied in his theme, or our theme, of togetherness and unity, stressed that a lot. And he raised some valid points in that speech. I liked the part with the comparative analysis of petrol prices in other countries and why the fuel subsidy was completely untenable. We know that, but it was a useful reminder in that speech. And I also like the fact that we all criticize, rightfully, because we earned a democracy. We have the right to criticize the government, of course. We all criticize the leadership, but us, the followers, as well, have a role to play. And there's a part in his speech where he threw the gauntlet at every Nigerian that we should encourage ourselves to do what is right and proper when nobody is watching. That we generally, our cultural values have been eroded. We've seen all kinds of ills. On a macro level, we talk about, security problems in Nigeria. We talk about corruption. But even in our daily lives, the way we treat our neighbor falls way short of the standards that many of us claim to have. Many of us claim to be Christian or Muslim or what have you, and we don't act like it. Even in traditional African religions, cheating people, stealing from people is completely verboten. But yeah, a lot of us in this country practice these ills. So we need to look within. It's not always about finger pointing at the powers that be. What kind of people are we? What kind of Nigeria are we creating? Everybody can brighten their own corner of Nigeria, and that collective effort will improve the fortunes of this country. And another part of the speech that I liked was talking about electoral reform. He took a moment there to pat himself on the back for the Edo State election and talked about how the courts should not be used to frustrate the will of the people. That's very important to note. And that trend has to end. We saw it becoming the latest fashion at some point. Disgruntled politicians saw losers would run to the Supreme Court. And it was really making a mockery of the democracy that we fought for in this country. So I like that. But then the downside for me was when the president was talking about trader money, farmer money, those interventions, school feeding program, and I was like, not now, not days after the ICPC have uncovered a 5.1 billion naira fraud. Should you attempt to boast about that, quite frankly? But generally, I thought it was a good speech. I feel inspired by it.
Dr. Abati?
Well, I think, it's a very well put together speech. Delivered in 25 minutes, 51 paragraphs, good structure, in which the president tried to inspire Nigerians, give a proper account of some of the things his administration has been able to do, raise questions about the future, and then draw attention to challenges and what we need to do about our country. Now, the first few paragraphs started on a historical note when he referred to what Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa said on October 1, 1960, about how the new nation, Nigeria, that had then become independent, has, a chance to make the best use of opportunities and also to create a national identity that future generations could become proud of. By the time the speech got to paragraph 9, the president raised a number of questions. He asked, how have we fared since then? Have we been on course? Have we been able to achieve the objectives? Then he moved on to now talk about, the challenges that we have faced. He identified the challenges, and some of those challenges, you cannot argue with what he identified. One, the tendency for us to concentrate on what he calls artificially constructed lines. And of course, we all know what those artificially constructed fault lines are in Nigeria: ethnicity, religion, the politics of hate, the politics of division. Somewhere there, he also talked about the challenge of population growth. I thought he would have gone a bit further, but although generally the speech is very short in terms of policy, another president could have used the occasion of October 1 to make one or two policy pronouncements. But, he restricted it to reflection, to review, and to, inspiring Nigerians to come together. And the challenge of population was that in 1960, when we became independent, the population was just about 52 million. And the urban population, out of all that, was just 7 million, with 910,768 square kilometers of land. Now, between 1960 and now, the only thing that has not changed is the size of the area, geographically referred to as Nigeria.
I think it's 923,000 now.
I mean the geographical area. Okay. The population has grown to 200 million. Now, according to the president, more than 50% of that is now in the urban area, creating all kinds of challenges in terms of development. But he didn't develop that theme further. However, he raised questions. Now, what do we do? Where do we want to go? How do we get there? How do we get there? What are those things that we should do? And the rest of that speech talks about those things that we should do: collective responsibility, collective reflection, and then key issues that he identified in paragraph 26. But I have issues with paragraph 41 to 48. Maybe I will talk about that later. We'll go on break now. When we return, the morning show will continue. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Well, we're still reviewing the headlines today on the occasion of Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary. We've been discussing President Muhammadu Buhari's national broadcast, which he delivered at 7 a.m. This morning. And I was saying that, the president raised questions about what we should do. Then he went on in paragraph 26 to identify 7 steps that his government is committed to. And some of those things are things that we are already aware of course. Taking people out of poverty, sustainable development, ensuring electoral integrity. He will return to that subject later in the subsequent paragraph when he talked about the Edo election and how his administration will continue to ensure the integrity of electoral processes, provision of infrastructure and all of that. But he anchored, all those steps, those 7 steps that he outlined in paragraph 26, on the fact that all of us have to work together as Nigerians, because according to him, it's only when we work together, when we take the same steps together, that's when we can say this is the destination that we want our country to reach. So for him, it's a matter of collective responsibility. Again, I do not think that anybody will quarrel with that. Now, I raised the point earlier that I quarrel with paragraphs 41, 41 to 48. Now, it was in paragraph 41 that the president began to talk about COVID challenges, the challenges of COVID and the steps that the government had taken to address those challenges. And they need to take very hard decisions. Of course, Tundu has already pointed out that some people may disagree with trader money, with school feeding program, with whatever money that is listed there, because many Nigerians have legitimately raised questions in that regard. Now, by the time he got to paragraph 42, he was saying that they've taken very bold steps which previous administrations did not take, and that the people who ran Nigeria from 1999 to 2015 have had the impudence to criticize us.
Impudence?
I thought that was a bit strong. That was like looking for trouble, because the PDP and other political parties who may read themselves into that speech will now abandon the more important points that the president is making, and they will feel...
Oh, and may I say, with scarce resources. He has had scarce resources, whereas others had more resources.
I think that chest beating and that attack on the PDP, as it were, may not have been necessary. Yeah. And then subsequently, the speech talks about the need to increase pump price of fuel. okay, yes, we're facing very hard times. The government needs to take a bold decision. I think the speech should have stopped there and not go ahead to start comparing in paragraph 48, Nigeria to Chad and to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Because there is a clear statement there that it doesn't make sense for oil to be cheaper in Nigeria than in Saudi Arabia. Somebody can take that also as a point of departure and say, no, I disagree. Yeah. So the editorial point that was made there could, in my view, be controversial. But the president is right, in my view, on many of the other points. He talks about artificial fault lines constructed by the people. He talks about the decline of institutions, the police, the military, judiciary. He talks about the need to respect the rule of law. I don't think anybody can argue with that. We need to respect the rule of law if we must strengthen our democracy. And then more importantly, the president gave a personal commitment to Nigerians in terms of his commitment to moving Nigeria to a place that we can describe as a better future and defending the interests of Nigerians. I thought that was the right statement for a statesman and for the leader of the country to make on a day like this. And then he ended the note, the broadcast in paragraph 51 on the note of hope. And I think hope is very important. Yeah. And the people that he celebrated, the Nigerians that he celebrated in the middle of the speech, these Nigerians who are everywhere in the world, who are doing well, and the ones at home who are doing well also. I think what has kept us going in this country is the resilience, the resourcefulness of the average Nigerian, and the hope that Nigerians have that this country will get to that future that the founding fathers talked about in 1960.
Dr. Abati, normally I don't give quick comment on this because I just, bring the stories, but I'll just say this. I like the speech because it enumerated a lot of challenges. One important one you pointed out was the one of the rural-urban migration problem we have. How, for a population of 45 million, we had in 1960, just 7 million lived in the cities, but now 50% of our population is living in the cities. And obviously, we've seen a knock-on effect as regards agriculture in the country and provision of food for ourselves. Because once you have most of those people in Lagos looking for white-collar jobs, then you have a downfall as regards agriculture and things like that. But I didn't hear what he was doing, to make that exciting. Because that's a very serious problem raised. We still have the country we have. We still have 923,000 square kilometers. But more importantly, what are we going to do?
910,768 square meters.
Then.
Well, he mentioned his agricultural
No, but Nigeria has
intervention
923,000 square kilometers of land.
We acquired more land.
No, Nigeria has 923,000 now. You can check it out.
Yeah, the president quoted 910,768.
Then, but Nigeria has 923,000 now. So something we should do as regards that.
He mentioned agricultural intervention programs. Whether you're convinced is a different story. Okay. But he mentioned that.
All right, that's all we could take on headline news. Short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus Odiri, Michael Wilson, and Aaron Akirjala to give us updates on African and global business. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. We've got Rotus Odiri, to talk to us today on Independence Day. Rotus, let me see you in your green tie.
Unfortunately, I don't have it. Tundu is representing with the green outfit, so unfortunately, I don't have a green tie. Yeah, I had a green shirt, but I couldn't get it on in time. Good morning to you all.
Good morning,
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Yeah, so look, you all have touched on some very good points from President Buhari's speech. So I was only focused on the economic parts of it with what he spoke about. Tundu has touched on the trader money and other issues. Doctor already talked about power. I believe President Buhari watches the morning show and he watched the business segment where I also made the comparison. I know Doctor doesn't like it, but I was struck by President Buhari making the comparisons to other oil-producing nations in an effort to make the case that fuel subsidy needs to be removed. He said a responsible government must face realities and make tough choices. But he didn't say anything about power. He didn't say anything about electricity tariffs. Maybe he doesn't want to get involved in what's going on right now with the labor unions and the talk of government. Of course, the increase on service reflective tariffs has been suspended for 2 weeks. But if you were to poll Nigerians today, by the way, I wish we had polls. Maybe we'll take on that responsibility here to start polling Nigerians to see how they feel about things in the country. But if you were to poll Nigerians and ask them for, what one of the biggest issues the country faces, I'm sure power would be up there. So I was hoping that he would have said something about, in line with him saying correctly that a responsible nation must face realities and make tough choices to bolster his case that fuel subsidy needs to be removed. I was hoping to see him say something about power, but he didn't say anything about that. Another thing that struck me was he's saying that we are blessed, that's Nigeria, with the most important asset any nation requires, which is our people. Human capital. Nigeria must make more investment in human capital since the president has correctly identified our people as the nation's #1 asset. He also mentioned lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. How do you do that? It is by developing human capital, and education has to be, part of that push. That really has to be a big push with respect to that. But as you all have already noted, I thought it was a good speech. He also mentioned the 60% drop in revenue. He mentioned a drop in foreign exchange earnings. Dr. Rufai have already also talked about population growth. It exceeds GDP growth. So, the president hit the right notes. I do wish he had talked about power, but in all, it was a pretty good speech. Moving on to the budget. This, of course, is in line with what we're looking at for next year. The 2021 budget, the Federal Executive Council has approved it. You can see some of the metrics that they have there. $40 per barrel oil benchmark, oil production at 1.86 million barrels. The exchange rates, 379. I mean, the NAFEX rate right now is at 385. The parallel market, I understand, has moved to like 470 now. So I don't, but hey, the exchange rate, that's what they put there, 379. Some would question how realistic that is. GDP growth, that's another metric there. There's Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Finance, when she spoke to reporters, said that they're estimating GDP growth in 2021 to be between 3 to 5%. Again, where we are now, the second quarter, we've contracted by 6.1. We're now in the fourth quarter. October 1st kicks off the fourth quarter of the year. We're expecting third quarter GDP growth, and it is expected to be negative. It is expected it's expected to tell us that yes, to confirm that we are indeed in a recession. So the last recession, we came out of that based on oil prices climbing, and it remains to be seen how we get to between 3 to 5% GDP growth when we've been averaging before this contraction. We've been just under 2%. So I don't know where we get that growth and where that growth comes from. Inflation, they're estimating that to be 11.95% for 2021. As we speak, we're at 13.2, and it is expected to climb further. So how headline inflation moderates to 11.5 in 2021, we'll have to see what conditions would make that happen. Expenditure, 13.808 trillion naira. The deficit is projected to be 4.4 trillion because spending is about 7 trillion or so. So we've got a large deficit. The president, in his speech, already noted that we've seen a 60% drop in revenues. How do you now fund that? Capital expenditure, you can see, is 29% of the total of the full budget there. Minister of Finance said that's an improvement on 2020. That was at 24%. But your capex has to be included. Again, if you go back to the president's speech where he's talking about our people being our #1 asset, you've got to spend more on capital expenditure in order to be able to lift people out of poverty and improve things. On the other side, recurrent expenditure, I understand it's about, for the performance for this year, 2020, revenues are at 68% performance, expenditure is at 92%, so salaries, overheads, and so on, that continues to be an issue that we're facing. And then there's the budget, the deficit there at the bottom. So, some of those metrics, some folks might have a bone to pick with how realistic they are, given where the revenue picture is now for the country. Next up is I'm obsessed with interest rates, I'm sorry. Yesterday we had a Treasury bill auction as of the 30th of September yesterday. So again, if you look at where rates are, they continue to drop. So previous rates, if you look at the 91-day T-bill, 1.09 dropped to 1.08. The 182 is at 1.5 previously, dropped to 1.4, and the 364-day bill at 3.05 dropped to 2.8. Where do we go? A bank sent out a notice to some customers. This was tweeted out by a couple people. Look at some savings rates. If you take a look at some savings rates here, I mean, look at that. Premier savings 1.15%, private just go all the way down. If you look at the bottom there, the tiers, if you got 100,000, you get 0.5%, 100,000 to 4.9 million, 1.5. I mean, at 250 million naira, you're maxing out at 2.5% in for a high growth savings account. So if you, the analogy was made that at 60 years old, Nigeria, if she was a civil servant, would be retiring and now be living off what she has saved, or be preparing to live off her pension payments and so on and so forth. If you look at where interest rates are going forward, where would they be in 2021? Where would they be going forward? So the interest rate environment is something else to look at. And then what I just talked about, this last image here, I picked this randomly off the internet. Are you, unfortunately this is in dollars though, it should be in naira, but are you better off than you were 10 years ago? This is a metric that every Nigerian needs to look at with regards to career progression, disposable income, whether the environments you are in 10 years ago, when we turned 50 to where we are at 60, the comparisons, it's something that every Nigerian has to reflect upon in order to, I guess, remain positive looking forward. And that's our update.
Imagine what the answer would be.
Ah, right, doctor.
Many Nigerians. And if you check the newspapers today on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of Nigeria, not quite a lot of excitement, although there are also people who are excited, but people are calling for restructuring. They're saying that it's a day that people should be willing. One newspaper even wrote a back page saying that people should wail responsibly. But I think that the thing that keeps us going is that in Nigeria we're people of faith, we're people of hope.
Yes.
And the president has challenged us to be optimistic. But on the budget, I think that the proposal announced yesterday by the Minister of Finance and approved by the Federal Executive Council, will it be correct to refer to it as the budget of optimism? And would you, in your own reckoning, think that that optimism is in order? Because the Minister of Finance was saying confidently that there will be recovery by the first quarter of 2021. Can we be that certain? And then this reference to the fact that the revenue stream will come from 60 government enterprises as compared to 10 government enterprises in previous proposals. What exactly is the meaning of that? Does it mean that certain government enterprises were not previously covered within the budget? And if inflation at the moment is 13.2%, where did they get that 11.9% projection from? When even the CBN told us recently that by the end of this quarter, this is the fourth quarter, by the end of this quarter, that inflation may be above 14%. So if you look at some of the benchmarks, it doesn't quite make sense. And then they're talking about 1.86 million barrels per day. Although I saw an explanation somewhere that this is not should not be interpreted as going beyond the OPEC limit, that it's oil plus condensate of about 400,000 barrels per day.
Right.
But we'll see, because it's a proposal.
Indeed,
It will still be debated by everyone, including Parliament.
All right, so thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Take that. We'll talk about that properly tomorrow. Moving on to business update, Michael Wilson joins us from London. Great to have you, Michael.
Morning. Congratulations on your special day today. Now, as far as Far East is concerned, most of the main markets closed, but that's a holiday thing. What wasn't a holiday thing was the whole of the Japanese, the Tokyo Stock Exchange halted all of yesterday due to a technical issue, the worst since 1999 when it shifted to full electronic trading. Now, whatever you think about it, it's important to get the geographical importance of this. It's the world's third largest, biggest exchange. It came on a day when everybody was trying to rearrange their portfolios, not just in Japan, but throughout the rest of the world as well. And it was a deeply unsettling experience. It affected 2,500 stocks, and I suspect they will take a while to recover from that. So therefore, not really an enormous amount apart from that going on as far as the Far East is concerned, or Asia is concerned. Volatility in stock markets low yesterday. That debate, the so-called debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, generated a lot of headlines, but basically no effect on the markets at all. The main political story that moved the markets yesterday, or had the potential to do it, was the continuing discussions about the US stimulus plan between Steven Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi. It seems that Mnuchin has gone to talk to, or will be going back to talk to the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi. There she is. Again, they're believed they're keen on a deal of 1.2 trillion. Democrats 2.2 trillion. So there's still a lot of apartness as far as that's concerned. But not a great deal to move the markets there. Most of them in Europe finished the day in the red. US indices finished up 1%. The political standoff is huge, actually, still in the United States. Unemployment rate fell to 8.4%, and also some solid indicators from the US. So it might hold back. This is my point about this. There's decent figures coming out of the United States right now, and so there's not a great deal of incentive to settle this this stimulus plan. Yesterday, the US private sector ADP employment report showed that 790,000 jobs were added. Chicago PMI was highest in 19 months, but preliminary reading of GDP down 31%. So all this is fairly mixed, but you can see this economy in the United States is getting underway again. We get the weekly jobless figures today, and then the all-important non-farm payrolls tomorrow. But if no stimulus deal is actually taking place, and this is what the Fed is now warning, that nations' major airlines, for example, will start laying off employees, demonstrating that it's all fairly fragile. Two important things as far as pharmaceuticals are concerned. Two companies in the United States say they're actually quite close to a vaccine, Moderna and Regeneron. Quite good news for pharmaceutical companies. But it has to be said, and you can test me on this as far as history is concerned, look at how long it actually takes for A, vaccines to be approved, and B, applied to the general population. And C, as a sort of hang on from B, is that many countries are still culturally opposed to having vaccines. That is still happening within the world as we know it. So just because a vaccine is supposed to be getting some kind of approval doesn't mean to say it's going to happen straight away. So a lot of caution on that. Let me refer you to EU demand. It's still in very, very low supply. We had French CPI absolute zero yesterday, and German CPI, their inflation rate, fell to 0.4%. However, European stocks are expected to trade slightly higher today, given that there was some gains as far as Wall Street was concerned last night, which I just told you about. As far as the United Kingdom is concerned, well, the furlough scheme starts to stop today. The less generous job support scheme kicks in, and Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, the Finance Minister here, is warning of £23 billion worth of bad loans that were from the virus support scheme, a lot of unviable companies. Big change of emphasis here. The Chancellor was saying a few days ago, and I reported this to you, that what he's proposing won't save every job. And now there's this phrase of unviable companies. In other words, the whole economy is changing just as it is right the way through the world. And to expect companies to actually survive in the way that they have been is seen to be not true. And that may involve some companies actually not surviving at all. Commodities, gold and silver took a bit of a knock yesterday, but that was just down to profit taking. And the oil price is very stagnant. I hope you have a lovely day of celebrating your magnificent progress.
All right, thank you so much. I just want to talk about the furlough scheme that starts today. That is pretty much like a copy of the German method. There are still fears and concerns that a lot of people are still going to lose their jobs despite this. They still feel it's largely inadequate. What's your take on this?
I think that unemployment in this country, as a percentage, will go into double figures. I think that where it is roughly around about 2 million under normal circumstances, I think that will extend to 4 million. There will be many people who will go onto the dole, as we put it, onto unemployment support. The job support scheme will be selective and won't support people in the same way that the furlough scheme has. So I think we're in for a very tricky autumn and winter. And again, yes, I think there may be some kind of turnaround as far as the economy is concerned in 2021 next year. My hesitation was just to say, I always think at the back of my mind that who are we? We're only journalists. We don't understand how people properly run businesses. We probably touch a few ideas of entrepreneurs here and there, but people are in this world, thank goodness, amazingly inventive about business and so on. And we may see a bit of that. We, like you, like to think of ourselves as being an entrepreneurial country. I'm not so sure about Europe itself. I feel as though leaving it, the continent is slightly going to suffer. But I think that individual countries will probably do quite well if they try hard, but it's going to be a really painful change.
Okay, very much reminds me of the old British phrase, keep calm and carry on. That's the way it's going to be. Thank you so much for that, Michael Wilson. All right, for updates on COVID-19 pandemic, we've got Aaron Akirjala here with us. Aaron, how's it going? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you, Rufai.
Good morning
to you.
Good morning.
You just try to call me at this one?
Can you see? Dr. Bati, can you see?
You just try to call me
At this one, Aaron's fine.
Wait.
Clearly. Well, I'm flattered.
It was
if you confuse me by this one.
Tundu, you see was all the seats?
Some few days ago. So.
You see was all the seats all this while? Dr. Bati, can you
No,
see?
but it's a compliment to be confused with her. So
That's not a Freudian slip.
it is.
Now let's get straight into it this morning. And looking at the global outlook of COVID-19, globally at the moment, we are edging closer to 34 million confirmed cases. All right, we'll talk about how the cases are actually slowing down, but we're still seeing infections. The numbers keep rising, but not as much as it used to be. At the moment, we see well over 1 million deaths across 188 territories. Now, trying to dimension it, as I actually get straight into my graph for today, we can actually see that COVID-19, at the moment, the death rates are a little bit flat, understanding that over 6,000 were recorded in the last 24 hours, which means that there was no marginal increase from what we saw in the last 48 hours. So although the cases are actually rising by 3% looking at the 14-day period, nevertheless, so we are still, things are not moving as fast. The rate of infection is not moving as fast as it used to be. Things are now beginning to slow down because we are seeing close to about 350,000 cases in every given 24 hours, which rose from some 2 months ago where we're seeing 250,000. But things are now beginning to slow down a little bit. Moving away from what is happening globally. Now to the UK, the Imperial College in London has actually been speaking, and probably something that Boris Johnson might be taking a succoy in the fact that from their major studies conducted, they are finding out that COVID-19 transmission seems to be slowing down in England. Infections are still up, but they are saying transmission. Now, that is where they are trying to, maybe a little bit of semantics there. Infections are actually, transmission is slowing down. Meanwhile, infections are actually going up. So that means that from people to people might not be as much as previously, because we're seeing the numbers there. In the last 14 days, it's actually up by 89%, and the deaths, as we still said, in the last 24 hours is up by 212%. But the Imperial College in London will have been conducting studies throughout September that has just passed, have said that transmission seems to be slowing down, even though we're seeing infections going up. That would mean that as they're getting into the colder months, as we're getting into the winter, and are getting into December, maybe we might begin to see at some point this rate of infections actually go down, the rates of deaths actually go down. So that might just be something very comforting. But at the moment, infections are still very up. Moving away from that to here in Nigeria, quickly looking at how things have actually played out. In Nigeria, we're seeing how the COVID-19 has been ravaging. We have well over 58,000 cases. But more importantly, I must actually say that the ban on Emirates Airlines have been lifted by the federal government, and it's not only that alone. We are also seeing, because one thing that COVID-19 has actually done has been to ground the entire aviation sector. So this is actually good news too. Emirates to actually see the ban actually lifted, although in South Africa, where they've also lifted restrictions on key airlines, and they've said places like the US, the UK, and some other places are still no-go areas, and they've banned airlines coming into that place, although anyone from Africa can travel within, to and from South Africa, but some key states in Europe are still under lock and key when it comes to how things will play out between South Africa. Remember, South Africa is the most infected country on the continent at the moment, with over 600,000 cases and still counting. Although deaths and infections have actually slowed down, but nevertheless, they're taking this 1 minute at a time. And I must say, it's good to be cautious, because it's better to be safe than to be sorry when it comes to COVID-19. And we've also seen one trend with COVID-19. As soon as lockdowns and as soon as restrictions are lifted, we begin to see numbers actually rise. We're actually looking forward to seeing how this is played out. I'm sure the South African government are paying close attention to the data, because they've seen it ravage quite a lot of people, although they must be commended in the way they've gone about responding to COVID-19, also with the help of the WHO. Now, moving away from that quickly, Michael was talking about vaccines and how things were actually playing out in terms of vaccines. But let's say that AstraZeneca and the vaccine has come under intense review right now. In Europe, the European bloc are looking at this vaccine, and they are beginning to review the vaccine with the hope of giving it an emergency approval. But in the US, they are trying to take a different approach to this Chadox 1 and COVID-19, which seems to be the fact that, remember, we spoke about someone actually falling ill after receiving the vaccine, and they are looking closely into it and trying to study this, because as it still stands right now, with all the talks about the vaccine, they are still looking the likeliest to get a vaccine, although Pfizer say this October, before the end of this October, we'll know whether their vaccine is actually safe and it can actually work. So we'll still be looking at that. But at the moment, we're still looking at how things played out with AstraZeneca. They were up there in the race initially, but right now things seem to have regressed in the US, who have actually shelled out billions of dollars in ensuring that this vaccine comes true for them.
Nigeria allowing Emirates Airlines to now access our airport.
Yeah.
Well, the key point here is reciprocity. And with the United Arab Emirates agreeing to grant Nigerians visas. Well, it's interesting to see the Nigerian government playing out the principle of reciprocity. However, if we tie that to the decision that has now been taken by the South Africans to allow every African airline to come into South Africa, well, are we going to take advantage of that opportunity? And if we do, and we stretch the principle of reciprocity, would airlines from South Africa also be allowed into Nigeria? I know that South African Airlines has some problems. South Africa Airways. And they are suspending operations for a period. But would other airlines be allowed from South Africa into Nigeria? Considering the fact that South Africa has almost half of the case of COVID-19 cases in Africa.
Yes.
Over 672,000, right? So that's the only part of it that I'm a bit uncomfortable about. You didn't mention India this morning. I think there's some interesting report coming from India in terms of how just about 8% of super spreaders are the ones responsible for more than over 70% of the cases that have been recently reported.
I wanted to talk about the vaccine. I mean, I'm not one of those anti-vaxxers. You have to embrace technology. It's like me wanting to send, I don't know, Dr. Batty a WhatsApp, as I often do, and deciding to send somebody on a horse-driven carriage to deliver it to his house. It's ridiculous. If there's a vaccine, you take it. My issue is with the unseemly haste. I'm not trying to become a part of a large medical class action suit in 20 years when we hear that the COVID-19 vaccine that was rushed has made you grow a tail or whatever. They need to take their time. It's the rush that I worry about.
And I must say, they've always said it, and it's still been proven that more than a vaccine, prevention is still way, way better than getting a vaccine, which would actually
use a mask.
Yes, we're about social distancing and washing of hands. But in the long run, at some point, we are hoping that the vaccine would actually kick in to probably help future generations. Maybe not the immediate.
Yes, as long as they take their time.
Yes,
that's it.
All right, Aaron, I don't know if you've got information as regards the zero prevalence test that will be done probably in Lagos, Gombe, and some other parts.
Yeah.
Do we have any information on that?
don't think they've kicked in yet. We'll still waiting for or the results, they've not started trickling in. It will take time because it will be for them to actually canvass Lagos. They remember the zero prevalence is just meant to cover these 4 states, like you mentioned, Enugu, Gombe, and Lagos states. So we are looking at. It will help us heavily because we spoke about zero prevalence and how it has helped other places, especially India and some other places, know the actuality and know the impact of COVID-19 in its economy. Because if we don't have that, we are not sure. We are still walking blind and still guessing on the impact of COVID-19, and it helps us plan. Doctor was speaking about data and how to use data in helping plan. The UK are doing what they're doing because they have a little bit of data and they can say that this is what the future looks like and this is how to prevent some of these things from actually spreading. That's why we are in September, now in October, and they're already talking about things in December because of data. We need data to actually drive things for us here in Nigeria.
And Aaron, do you have information on the 32 billion naira that we were told will be given to 32 states, and which 4 states have been excluded? That's about a week ago. So what's the situation with that?
We've not had any disbursements about some of this COVID, and certainly more scrutiny will be going into this, and I'm sure before disbursements will go out, more scrutiny would actually have to go in, especially on the back of that report we brought yesterday about funds majorly being mismanaged in terms of COVID-19. During the COVID-19 period, we spoke about how ICPC uncovered billions that was meant to be shared to schools and were found in accounts of several other people, some even dead and deceased at the moment.
All right,
Thank you.